distant. Initially, you had to be present, but when we spoke to our stakeholders, we realized that that was not practical. So by second week of February, when we get all this information from the operators, we're going to try and align it, because PURA has to go with them to make sure they're doing the right thing, to make sure that they're registering properly, to make sure that there are no sort of stumbling blocks in the way. So that is information that's going to come out. But we do intend to have a nationwide SIM card registration. So for you who are airing up country, you can also pass that message on that they're coming, so wait, don't rush or panic.
Thank you.
And as much as we want to follow international best practice, we have to put our local context into perspective as well. If you remember a few years ago, there was a policy decision to say that all these people who are begging on the streets, wheelchairs, just idling around, instead of them begging, let them sell SIM cards, let them sell credit so that they can earn money instead of begging. And so what we thought about this question, should we recall all the SIM cards from all these people and send them to the head office? And we said no for two reasons. Number one, Gambia is trying to promote universal access with telecommunications. If you stop these people from selling SIM cards and you have to come all the way from Banjul to Caraba Avenue to buy a SIM card, you will not go. Or if you go, you'll go later. So what happens is we don't want to adversely affect the sales of the GSM operators. We want to continue to enjoy the high rate we have for teledensity. We have one of the highest in Africa. We are at 94%. Countries like Nigeria are still at 40, 50%. So we've gone very far. And we don't want to restrict that. At the same time, we don't want to lose the livelihood of these people. If you say, give me back my SIM cards, what do? I cannot sell anymore. I'll either start begging or start stealing or making myself a nuisance in society. So that has been something we've had to balance, which is why we've allowed them to continue to sell SIM cards. So any information that says your name, your phone number, your date of birth, it relates to you as an individual, therefore it will be data. But if you want to talk about personal data as well, it's the same thing, because it links to you as a person, therefore the information is personal to you. Security of information and communications services, which is what we talked about, having a secure database which cannot be accessed accidentally or deliberately. We have the data for the identification of subscribers. This is the provision that provides for SIM card registration. It provides that GSM operators must collect the data for identification of subscribers. Of course, if I don't register you, I cannot identify you. Therefore, I will not know who my subscribers are. So that's the section we're talking about. Information to be provided to subscribers. That's what we talked about. Before you register somebody or before you take their data, you must tell them, why are you taking my data? What you're going to do with my data? What my rights are under the data that you're collecting. So the law provides very clearly for the information to be provided. Maintenance of subscriber lists, what I just mentioned. If you don't want people to be calling you, texting you, giving you free services, new services, you request for them to put you on a subscriber list that says do not contact. And they should have two, contact, do not contact. So if you're on that subscriber list, if they contact you, then you have cause to say, this is what I asked you to do, you haven't done it, and you can take recourse against them. If you decide you don't want to be contacted, and then all of a sudden your friends are telling you about all these new services that you did not know about, or new promotions, you can call them and say, change me to the call list. You can change it. When you stay on a list, it doesn't mean you have to be on the list forever. You have the right as a data subject to now amend that. It talks about use of communications for direct marketing. That's what we're talking about now. Before you market me directly, how do you go about it? And the law goes into detail. It talks about by fax, by email, by text, by calling, by automated services. It breaks it down. There are provisions for each and every way you can communicate with a person. Itemized billing and privacy. There used to be a time where everybody got itemized billing. Then people started getting into trouble because their wives would look at their phone bill and say, who's this number, what's that number, and start calling everybody they're calling. So the GSM operators now stopped itemizing billing because it was causing a lot of family problems. And they were now asked to, if you want itemized, you contact us and you tell us, we'll itemize, but it's no longer automatic. And that goes into privacy as well. Prevention of calling line identification. I'll let Solo go into that. It's basically, a lot of people have been telling us, okay, you say you register, somebody commits a crime, you can catch them. But what if they call me on private number? I cannot see the number, so how can I report them? But the law has also provided a provision for how to go about catching somebody who is calling you on a private number. It's a bit technical, so I'll let Solo do that explanation.
This technical bit is, when some first presentation, he gave a definition of what SIM is. Subscriber identification model. So identification, where he says subscriber is missing. It means the SIM card in itself is already identified on the network through the number that it has and the series of the number series of small numbers that it has. So the card itself is identified on the network. The network knows which card is making a particular call. Even if by the action of the network, they decided to keep it as a private number, as much as it's private to me, the number is identified on the network. So if somebody calls somebody with a private number, all you have to do is keep that number and the time that it was called and stuff. They should be able to link that to an actual 7-digit number that you would have seen if the person did not mask it. So it's only masked to you, but it's not masked to the network. So if it is masked and the person is registered, then obviously the number could be linked to the person.
You know, I go out for marketing. But right now, I'm not doing marketing. But you know, sometimes I use my private line. My gun says, you know, it's private. I use it to, you know, to call my clients. So what will happen?
Right now, the GSM operators may not even have the technical means to even block your number. But we've put this provision in place so that the day that we develop to the point where these things are possible, you don't have to go back to reenacting the law. If you go to a GSM operator, as I said, your life has to be threatened, you're blackmailed, or you're undergoing some serious harassment for you to go and complain to a GSM operator. I cannot go to him and say, oh, I don't want to pay my bill, this guy's calling me, can you stop me from receiving private number? You have to write to your GSM operator and tell them what are the threats and blackmails that you're receiving. And they have to determine that this is the best way to address the situation. So you calling your customers for their bill, there's no GSM operator which will take that seriously enough to block, you know, private line access. At the same time, I mean, they also want people paying their bills. So if they help somebody to evade paying that bill, you know, it might come back to haunt them. Addressing individuals in that aspect, situations where your life is threatened, where somebody says, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to murder you, and you have serious cause to believe that this may happen to you. And that's when you go through a process of reporting the matter as a process. So it's not geared towards affecting your individual business. And don't forget, you have, if they don't pick up your phone calls, they put it on there, you have other legal means to get your money as well, because you have a contract. You go to your lawyer, you write to them, you proceed in other ways. That's not the only way. Data protection is where you register your SIM card, you register your data card. In India, for example, if you want to go into an internet cafe, you have to register before using the internet. But that's because of the high level of threats, bombs that they have there. So they have additional security even to access the internet. What we're trying to do with SIM card registration, we don't want to restrict the growth of the telecommunications sector. We don't want to make it difficult for subscribers to access their data in terms of internet, phone calls, emails, text messages. Once you start doing that, it's as though you're trying to restrict communications. And if you know Gambia, one thing we have is a very liberalized telecommunications market. As small as we are, we have 4 GSM operators. We have at least 7 internet service providers. So data protection is about registration. Privacy of your communications is what you're referring to, and that is in no way affected by the SIM card registration. You can still access your internet, you can access whatever you want. If you break the law by accessing certain websites or trying to commit illegal crimes, hacking into people's emails accounts, etc., there's a whole different sector dealing with that. As Solo said, our job is just to register SIM cards. Okay. How to catch the criminals, how to deal with them, how to identify them, that's not our problem. We register the SIM cards, the police do their job, we do our job. So we're just creating an environment where it's structured enough that people are able to now investigate crimes in a more efficient, more acceptable manner.
In case if that person happened to commit a crime and throw the SIM card, what are your plans to defend that particular person whose details are being used to register a person?
Malamin, Solo who's the owner, but I'm bringing Solo's card to say, Solo says I should register Malamin for him as the user. It gets complicated. So it means you cannot do that.
You want to register somebody, it's your details that are taken. So you cannot register in absence. That's why we made it clear here, some presentation, you register in person. There is no registration in proxy, like online or by SMS, it's not possible. You have to go in person. If I am registering my grandfather, my grandmother, I am the owner of the SIM card. So I am a subscriber. I register my name and reuse my grandmother as a user. So the onus is on me to make sure that when anything that I must listen to my grandmother or somebody I register. But the line is registered in my name as the subscriber or as the owner of the line, and the other one is the user. Or else, if I say my grandmothers and fathers, 4 of them are too old, I want to use 5, I used to exhort